Hello friends, last time we talked about product lifecycle and real estate brokerage model. As you know that everything has a certain lifespan. Even product and services have a lifespan. Nothing is forever. So basically when you launch a new product or new service, then basically with the passage of time, the sales and adaptability increases. And then there is a trend which is basically almost one-to-one. It goes up and then it goes into a peak and then it comes down. So whatever goes up has to come down. That's the law of nature. So wise companies basically predict their product life cycle themselves. They know that what is the product life cycle, and then before anybody else comes in and replace their product, they replace their own product. I gave you this example before that you take a look of Apple. Apple always come up with the new product themselves and they cannibalize their old product. They basically introduce a new product and of course the old product price goes down. But they rather really take the hit and cannibalize put an end to their own product instead of somebody else comes in with a better product. When iPhone 10 came, then basically people thought, wow, that's a huge thing. Yes, it was a huge thing. And then, of course, they did not stop there. They kept coming with 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And every single time they come up with a newer product and they like to stay ahead of the curve of their competition. And again, competitions have done the same thing and now it's a healthy competition and there are a lot of good product for a lower cost. So what I'm trying to say is that there is always a product life cycle, and your job as an innovator and as an entrepreneur is to predict the lifespan of your own product and services. And you make sure you come up with a new product and service so that somebody else does not come and replaces you. Just like the typewriter was replaced by a computer, and just like a regular phone was replaced by a cell phone, and just like many other inventions, they got replaced. And those companies who built those products, if they did not reinvent themselves and cannibalize themselves, then they got replaced. So this is what we should think always, and we should try to invent our own product, a reinvent, so that you are always ahead of the curve. And that's the reason you keep coming up with the new product, and that's how you go up. Otherwise, you will go up and your sale will come down and then it will die away. Unless you come up with a new product before the peak of your existing product. Okay, and then you keep doing this all the time. And that's what, for example, Apple does. That's the reason you see Apple keep going up. And likewise, Tesla or any other good company, they come up with their own new product instead of somebody else coming up with a new product with better features. Now, real estate brokerage hasn't really invented itself for a long time. And they have been working on this model where buyer agent makes their earning from the seller, interestingly. And sooner or later, it had to catch up, and it did catch up, that basically it is declared as a conflict of interest. It is truly a conflict of interest that you are representing a buyer, but you're making your compensation from a seller. So that takes away your neutrality, and that is a conflict of interest. And now this model has failed. It's going to fail if it hasn't completely failed yet. So it is the time, it's already late that this industry reinvent itself. Honestly, I don't see many big brokerage companies are coming up with any new model. And that really bothers me because they're very stagnant and they have inertia. They keep thinking the old method because this brokerage model has been into existence for well over 100 years and they believe that still will exist. I do believe that this brokerage model will change. You would have to make your earning from either a seller or a buyer and have to represent them. You can either be a seller's agent or buyer's agent and then get paid from that entity for providing a service, a value to them. So for example, like I'm a real estate developer and customers can come directly to me. And another thing what they have done on the technology, that basically if it is my listing, I'm a developer and a broker and I listed something. And if I don't spend a lot of marketing dollars, they spend more marketing dollars, I mean the agents, and then they end up taking over on my listing and then customer think that it is their listing, but reality is it's not their listing. They just put their name on my listing. So that also is going to change in near future. So instead of reinventing the model, coming up with the new ideas, they just keep on just kind of putting powder and lipstick on the old model. So that's just not going to work. So here, this is the reason I said in my last video that real estate agents and brokerage firm have to come up with the new model and they have to retool themselves. So one of the idea I said they need to retool is that they could actually be an expert in certain areas where they are helping either a buyer or a seller. Let's say you are seller's agent. If you are seller's agent, then your job should be how can you maximize your seller's value? Now you would say, oh yeah, we always do that. I'm sorry, you only try to negotiate a fixed buy. What is a fixed buy? Let's say it's $1 million home and you are trying to make sure that how much of that $1 million you are going to get to your seller. Let's say you're gonna try to get $950 and then the other $50,000 get divided between the brokerage. That, in your opinion, you're trying to get a best value. I'm sorry, that is a very, very short-term thinking, and that's a very fixated thinking. On the other hand, what if you can increase the value of your seller's product, which is a house, to $1.3 million? And now if you make $25,000 or $30,000, you not only earn yourself, you'll also gain a lot of respect in your seller's mind, and then you will have that a long-term relationship. And you might ask, oh, you are trying to increase the price and you may screw up with the other side. No, that's not what I'm saying. You simply increase the price. You maximize the value. That's the reason my company name is Richvmax. When I gave a Richvmax name to my brokerage and my real estate development company, the thought behind in my mind was that you maximize each stakeholder's value. And how do you really increase the value? By expanding the pie. You may have heard pie expansion, but you may not know what that pie expansion. Pie expansion is not just merely a talk. It's not just a presentation. It is this set of practices and certain vision and execution of that vision. And of course, it costs and it requires some skills to execute that vision. And hence the pie expands. Pie expansion means that you actually literally buy a pizza and now you can only make 8 pieces of pizza. So you only have 8 pieces. Now, if you want to make 10 out of 8, you just have to make smaller pieces. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, how do you increase the size of the pizza? If this was a 10-inch, how can you make it a 14-inch or 16-inch pizza without really spending so much cost to it? So your productivity, your value proposition increase for everybody. The people who are buying the pizza will get a bigger piece, and people who are selling the pizza get a little more money, but both parties benefit. How can you do that? Let me give you an example of a house. You go to see a house from a seller and the seller said, well, if I could get $1 million for the house, I would be very happy. Now you basically value add and you say, yeah, I can probably list it for $1 million. And now you try to get the best deal and close as quickly as possible. That, in my humble opinion, is not pie expansion. That is a fixed pie. Now, because the buyer want to pay as little as possible, you want to get as much as to your customer. But what if you expand the pie? What can you do to expand the pie? You go there and you have a vision, but you need to retool yourself. You need to have those skills that when you go inside the house, you realize that what can you do that if a seller want to sell it for $1 million, do you have the tools and skill set and expertise and connectivity with the network that you can actually increase the value of that house for 1.3, and yet when you sell for 1.3, the buyer also feel motivated and happy that they got a bigger value. Let me give you an example. There was a house I was working with, and that house was $1 million house. It was an area that basically not everybody has an attached garage. So they did not have an attached garage, even though it was $1 million house. It did not have an attached garage, and they were trying to sell it. And of course, because there was no attached garage, very few buyer would want to buy that. So it was a lot of reluctance. Now buyers are really lowballing it because it really creates a hindrance for them because it is a cold weather area, and now when you live in cold weather area, it's very important to have an attached garage. So I talked to their agent and I talked to the seller as well, saying, why don't you think outside of the box? And how do you think outside of the box? you go and you check the records and look at the setbacks, that do you even have the setback? Do you have the land? They said, yeah, we have a lot of land. But I said, then you need to check your setbacks, because you cannot really expand the house wherever you want. You have to really see whether you can go 30 feet right, 30 feet left, 10 feet, 20 feet. What is the setback? That is something you need to retool and educate yourself. The record is available in the town records or city records. Either you have to hire a civil engineer, and civil engineer knows it, but you don't need to hire a civil engineer. If you just educate yourself a little bit with the setbacks, and all the data is already there in the town website, and if you really don't even know how to read that, then you could just go and talk to the town engineer and the building department and look at those setbacks together. Once you do one time, you will learn and you will understand that. Now you check, and I made them check that, and basically they checked and they could extend another 30 feet on the right hand side, only on the right hand side. So that worked out perfect. Then I said, look, it will cost you less than $30,000 to build 2-car garage, and it will add a tremendous value in your house. And now the house actually, just by $30,000, they were able to increase their price to more than 10%. And now the demand increased and people are actually bidding against each other. And now the house was sold for 1.15. So you increase $150,000 by just adding $30,000. So you increase $120,000 of value proposition, and you expanded the pie. And how did that help the buyer? Because the buyer really needed this. More buyers actually want that, and they are getting a better value because they didn't know, they don't have the skills whether this could be, expanded with a garage or not. This is only one example I gave you. There are other examples, whether you add a sunroom or a deck, or you change the kitchen, you change the floors, you paint. It all depends on each situation. But the point I'm trying to raise here is that you need to retool yourself and think outside of the box. And when you go and you represent the buyer or the seller, not both, and then with your skills, the first skill is vision, then is understanding these bylaws and doing this due diligence. Once you do this due diligence, then you need to have a connectivity to execute that. And now you can do it two ways. Either you have a very well thought out plan and you present it to the buyer. Now, not every buyer will believe you even if you have well thought out plan, because they don't want to deal with this. Or you can actually execute. In my case, they actually end up executing, and they actually increasing their value more than 10%, and yet they have more buyers. So this is just one example today. Now there are many other examples I can give you, and then there are also other technical examples, like if, for example, you educate yourself and you train yourself, and now there are many other aspects of real estate brokerage. The other side of that is basically becoming a marketing specialist for a real estate developer. Or another side of it is that basically becoming a marketing specialist for 40B, specialized industry. So there are many ways you can retool yourself, but you really need to first think outside of the box, maximize the value of your buyer or seller. Right now, I only give you the seller example. Next time I give you buyer example. How can you maximize their value? But you have to be able to understand, then execute and increase the value proposition, hence increase the pie. If you were able to increase the value $120,000 net value, then I'm sure you can also set up a deal for yourself that not only you get 2.5-3% agent fee, but you can also get 5 to 10% of the spend, what you're spending to execute. That would be another second income for you. So now you increase the value of the seller, you increase the value proposition of the buyer, you enhance more buyers, you create more marketing, and yet you created another second source of income for yourself as well. So I think it just starts from the vision and then having the skills to execute. As we move forward, I will be recording more videos that how can you actually increase the value proposition for everybody in the pie. The pie itself get expanded, the front end, the sale end get expanded, and the back end get expanded, and everybody can benefit if you have the right vision and right execution with the right skills. Until next time, stay healthy and happy, and we'll come with the new video next time too. Thanks.